Good morning, football fans, and welcome to this episode of Morning Kickoff, this Monday morning episode of Morning Kickoff, a weekly show where we cover all news football. I'm your host, Matt Whit. Today we are live from Minneapolis, Minnesota on the Morning Kickoff YouTube channel. You can check us out every Monday and Thursday morning around 9 o'clock Central, or listen to all the pre-recorded podcasts wherever you get your podcast. Today is February 28th, the last day of February, and the last day of waiting for the NFL Combine. The 2022 NFL Combine is here, and we can look at this upcoming draft finally and see really where these quarterbacks are going to be taken, because still we don't know who the first quarterback off the board is going to be, and it'd be nice to see these quarterbacks compete, and whoever is going to look best in the combine. We'll look at all of that in today's episode. We're also going to be taking a look at another quarterback to mention here, and that is Kellen Mond, because I've heard a lot of Kellen Mond things going around with the Minnesota Vikings, potential trades, potential future starter with the team. So we're going to look at all this on today's episode of Morning Kickoff. I hope you all enjoy. Do you enjoy listening to this podcast? If you don't, that's totally fine. But if you do and would like to help out, there will be a link in the description that will bring you to my merch store. At this store, we sell t-shirts, sweatshirts, and mugs, and all of the profit earned will go towards the production of this podcast. Thank you all, and enjoy the show. The NFL Combine, 2022 NFL Combine is finally here. The wait is over, you guys. We are on the final day of February, which means we're on the final day of waiting for the 2022 NFL Combine. And a position to look at the most here is quarterbacks, because for maybe the first time in a long time since, I guess the Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold situation a few years ago, since the first time in a long time, we really don't know who the first quarterback off the board is going to be. I mean, is that going to be Kenny Pickett? That's what people were saying for a long time. Well, Malik Willis just had a great tape go out. He had an excellent workout, and yeah, now his value just upped a little bit. Matt Corral, another very talented quarterback, might not be a day one starter, might not be ready now, but could also be the first quarterback off the board. And then you got other named Desmond Ridder, you got Carson Strong, Sam Howell. There are multiple quarterbacks around that really you don't know where these guys are going to go. So this combine is going to be really interesting. But a name I want to mention here, and this is because I've heard his name surface around a lot, is Vikings' second string quarterback, Kellen Mond. Kellen Mond was drafted in the third round out of the 2021 draft class by the Minnesota Vikings. Second pick in the third round out of Texas A&M after an incredible Texas A&M career. He finished first in passing yards in franchise history at Texas, first in passing touchdowns in the franchise history, and was also 3-0 in bowl games. So just an excellent career when you look at his Texas A&M performance. And then you ask yourself, well, why were the Vikings able to get him in the third round? Why did the Vikings get Kellen Mond in the third round? A quarterback with as great of a track record as he has. And it's simply because of the draft class that the 2021 draft class had. And something a lot of people are saying here is, well, the 2021 draft class was stacked when it comes to quarterbacks. The top three players taken were all quarterbacks. And now you look at this upcoming draft. This upcoming quarterback draft class, I mean, does anybody look like they're going to be a Hall of Fame? Does anybody look like they're going to be the next franchise guy? I mean, one of these players are likely going to be, but when you look at quarterbacks drafted in the first round, in the second round, third round, a majority of them are busts. Even just quarterbacks drafted in the first round. I mean, how often does a quarterback drafted in the first round become the next franchise guy? Doesn't happen too often. It really doesn't. You look at many draft classes, it does not happen very often. It is a gem, it is a swing, and a lot of the times it's a swing and a miss. And then you look at this draft class and you're saying to yourself, well, if Kellen Mond was drafted this year, Kellen Mond would have been the third, fourth, fifth quarterback taken. I mean, Kellen Mond came off of a tremendous, outstanding Texas A&M career. Great 4 years. I believe he was a starter 4 years and was taken by the Vikings in the third round. Not only was he taken by the Vikings in the third round, but he was the seventh quarterback taken in the 2021 draft class. And then you look at really his disadvantages here. Now, Kellen Mond coming into the draft class was no day one starter. He wasn't ready to be a win now guy. He's a quarterback who has to play under the right system because he's an undersized quarterback. I mean, is size that important when it comes to quarterbacks anymore? Drew Brees, Russell Wilson, it's not that important. Those are both Hall of Famer, future Hall of Famer quarterbacks. But then his accuracy not there. His accuracy is not there. His arm strength is also an issue. So you look at it and it's really, he has to play under the right system. Kellen Mond has got to play under the right system. And yes, can Kellen Mond be a future starter in the NFL? Absolutely he can. He just has to play under the right system. And then you look at the Vikings situation and Kellen Mond is such a relief. He's such a great player to have on your team because yes, from the limited time we saw him this last season didn't look great. But that quarterback that we saw at Texas A&M is still in there somewhere. And here's the thing, Vikings fans, I want you guys to hear me loud and clear. Vikings getting rid of Kirk Cousins, whoever fills in for Kirk Cousins will not be as good as Kirk Cousins. I understand that. Whoever we fit, whether we start with Kellen Mond, which likely won't happen, or we trade away Kirk Cousins and get a quarterback in the trade. That's the most likely scenario. I mean, you trade with the Panthers, you get Sam Darnold. You trade with the Browns, you'll likely get Baker Mayfield. Even if you trade with the Colts, you'll get Carson Wentz likely in that trade. If you trade with the Broncos, you'll likely get Drew Lock. So in a lot of these trades, you're likely going to bring in a quarterback who's going to be worse than Kirk Cousins. But here's the thing, you guys. We might get a quarterback that's worse than Kirk Cousins, but our team is going to be better without Kirk Cousins. Because you pay a quarterback 45, you trade Kirk Cousins, you save yourself $35 million where you can fill a lot of these massive holes. Let's not forget, this Vikings team might be solid with Kirk Cousins. We might be a top offense with Kirk Cousins, but at the end of the day, we're not a Super Bowl contending team right now because of how many holes we have on this team. You get that $35 million, you save yourself that much money, you can fill your cornerback need. You can fill your need at linebacker, defensive end. I mean, there are multiple needs on this Vikings team that right now we have to focus on, and this has to be the focus. So although we might not have as good of a quarterback as Kirk Cousins, our team is going to be better. The supporting cast is going to be better than if we had Kirk Cousins. Because if there's one thing I want to mention here, I understand where the Kirk lovers are coming from. I can see why you like the guy. He's a talented guy. But he has to play into the right system. He has to play under a great offensive line, great playmakers, which the Vikings don't have. We might have great playmakers, but we definitely cannot afford a great offensive line for Kirk Cousins to be behind. Offensive line is very important. Kirk Cousins needs a great offensive line and can be a Super Bowl winning quarterback. I'm going to say that he can be a Super Bowl winning quarterback. Now, you go back to the Kellen Mond situation, and right now, where the Vikings are sitting at, it's a great spot for Kellen Mond to be. Nobody should be more happy about the Kevin O'Connell signing than Kellen Mond. Nobody. Because if there's one thing the Vikings have been missing, is putting a quarterback in the right situation to succeed. And that's exactly what Kevin O'Connell is here to do. That's exactly what our offensive coordinator and offensive coaching staff is here to do, is to put these future quarterback, whoever is going to be the franchise guy, in the right system. Because right now, I mean, when you look at the whole situation as a whole, it doesn't look too great for this Vikings team. Because with the terrible cap situation that we put ourselves in and how many needs we have, it simply cannot happen that the Vikings fill all their needs unless they trade away Kirk Cousins and look to the future. It just cannot happen where the Vikings fill all these needs. It simply cannot happen. And that's why you look at who's going to be the next quarterback for the Vikings. Well, if we trade away Kirk Cousins, I've mentioned how we're likely going to get a quarterback back in the trade. Whether that's Sam Darnold, Carson Wentz, Drew Lock. I mean, one of these quarterbacks will likely be in the trade. If it doesn't happen, I mean, there's some free agent quarterbacks that you can use as transitional pieces, that you can use as guys who will transition into either Kellen Mond, transition into whoever you're going to be your next quarterback that you draft. These will be like Jameis Winston, Teddy Bridgewater, Ryan Fitzpatrick. You know, the guys who are free agents every year. Teddy Bridgewater, Ryan Fitzpatrick are free agents every year and always get a starting job. Why? Because they're top 32 quarterbacks in the league, but they're injury-prone quarterbacks who are just kind of band-aids. They're kind of transitional quarterbacks, to say the least. But Teddy Bridgewater coming back to the team, I mean, who would not be a fan of that? That'd be awesome. Now, him starting he'll likely get injured because Teddy Bridgewater gets injured every year. And then you got Kellen Mond coming off the bench. See, I'm not a fan of the Vikings having Mond as their first choice for quarterback this next year. Not a fan. I don't like it at all. I think Kellen Mond's got to be our backup. And he can back up an injury-prone player. Say we make a trade with the Colts. We get Carson Wentz, fine. Okay, Carson Wentz's contract might be a little high, but at the end of the day, you have him as a transitional piece. Kellen Mond can step off the bench and hopefully fit into our system. So the problem with Kellen Mond, and this has been the problem with them at Texas A&M, and what we saw from him a little bit of time that he played in the NFL, both in preseason and when Kirk had COVID. When he came out there, his accuracy was not there. He throws short to mid-range passes, and a lot of them end up in the hands of the defenders. He threw an almost 3-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio this last year. Actually, less than 3-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio this last year, or in his career in Texas A&M. He's also an undersized guy. His completion percentage is just 59, which 59 completion percentage is not awful, but when you're throwing short to mid-range passes, not great. It's not great right there. His average pass per attempt is just 7.1 yards. So it doesn't look great when it comes to Kellen Mond. But at the end of the day, we know this guy is a freak of an athlete. He's a dual threat quarterback. When was the last time the Vikings have had a dual threat quarterback? This guy right here. This guy right here in the back. That's the last time the Vikings had a dual threat quarterback. Was the time when Madden was made. It was was made on PlayStation 2. All right, it's been a long time since we've had a dual threat. That's Dante Culpepper, in case you were wondering. That's We haven't had a dual threat quarterback since Dante Culpepper. It's been such a long time waiting that the Vikings have a quarterback who's mobile, that the Vikings have a quarterback who can move outside the pocket. Because at the end of the day, you guys, I know we have a different coaching staff, but we are cursed when it comes to drafting and developing offensive line. We're cursed. We're completely cursed. The only good offensive line that we've drafted that's been worth a draft pick has been Brian O'Neill in the last decade. All right. We're cursed when it comes to offensive line. And if there's one thing I know from a lot of Kirk lovers, is that Kirk's got to play another great offensive line. And we simply cannot afford that with a $45 million cap hit. And that's why what I'm saying here, I don't want to continue to talk on this Kirk trade. What I'm focusing on here is the Kellen Mond's ceiling. What is Kellen Mond's ceiling in the NFL? He might lower the floor. This is what I heard someone say. He might lower the floor, but he raises the ceiling for the Vikings team, because he will be a decline from Kirk Cousins, at least in his first year starting. I don't see a case where Kellen Mond can have a better first year starting than Kirk Cousins would if he was our quarterback in 2022. However, I can 100% see the Vikings have a better team than if they had Kirk Cousins, because we have to move this money elsewhere. We cannot have the same money, the same percentage of our cap space going to quarterback and Danielle Hunter. Okay, Danielle Hunter is another very overpaid contract that we have that we got to get rid of. If the Vikings can get rid of Kirk Cousins' contract and get rid of Danielle Hunter's contract, we are in a situation to succeed. We are in such a good position, being in the NFC North that might lose Aaron Rodgers, the NFC North that might lose Devontae Adams, where you have the Lions and Bears going through a rebuild as well. I mean, it's such a good position the Vikings are in. And if you can find a trade for Kirk Cousins, you cannot turn that down, because this is just it feels so good for our Vikings team. And to have Kevin O'Connell as our head coach, and I've said many times that I'm a huge fan of this Kevin O'Connell hiring, and I don't believe why people are still mad that people actually wanted Jim Harbaugh, sorry, not his brother. But if we have Kevin O'Connell as our head coach, if Kellen Mond is still under contract with us, which he will be, because I assume the Vikings won't trade him, might get a few trade offers, but it won't be too great because he doesn't look like he's going to be a day one starter franchise guy anytime soon. So if he is still on a roster, which he will be, as a backup quarterback, and you put him in the right situation to succeed, Kellen Mond, yes, he can be a future starter in the NFL. He might be a huge decline from Kirk Cousins, but he raises the ceiling for this Vikings team. LGKDOC says he believes the Colts will trade Wentz. I think it's going to happen too, because with the Colts right now, I mean, first of all, the Colts should have never have traded for Wentz. It was a terrible trade, and it was just, they were so desperate for quarterback. And here's the thing, with Kirk Cousins as the Colts quarterback, Colts are taking that division. Not only are they taking that division, but they're running with that division. The only thing that could hold them back is King Henry. That's the only thing that could hold them back from taking that division. At the end of the day, just an excellent player could go to the Colts and they'd be a Super Bowl contending team with Kirk Cousins. They give us Wentz. I'm fine with taking Wentz. Now, I've said many times that I don't like having band-aids at the quarterback position. I don't like just throwing band-aids at the quarterback position. However, with that being said, you get Carson Wentz, just have him on, I believe he's under contract for one more year if I have that right. Carson Wentz is going to get injured this next year. We know it's going to happen. Then we have Kellen Mond step out. Kellen Mond stepping out off of the bench can be a pleasant surprise for this next season for the Vikings team. I'm fine with Carson Wentz being our starter. I'm okay with it. I know it might seem like I'm not, because I don't really like Carson Wentz. I don't think he's worth his money at all, and I don't like his injuries. His injuries is just holding him back. However, that's okay for the Vikings, because having Kellen Mond coming off of the bench could be a pleasant surprise to see for this Vikings team next year. And then you look at these quarterbacks in this next draft class. Like, we can find a quarterback in the second round. We can. Maybe we get a Carson Strong. Maybe we get a Sam Howell. Maybe we can get one of these in the second round as well and have a little bit of a battle at the quarterback position. A lot of young guys, and I'm okay with that right now. I'm okay because we are a young team. AJ Green says, one thing I like about Mond is his quick release of the football. It comes out quick and fast. I completely agree. However, it comes out quick and fast because he's throwing just 5-yard passes. And this is one thing that we saw at Texas A&M, and I'm fine with it. Why? Because it works. But here's the thing. I mean, like, Adam Thielen and Justin Jefferson are deep threats. They can run past guys. We need someone who can hit them deep, which is why Kellen Mond, we have to see more. We have to see more of Kellen Mond. And If there's one thing I like about Kirk Cousins, he throws a beautiful deep ball. He has a strong arm and he can throw a deep ball. Can't say the same about Kellen Mond. And it's going to be a falling off. If the Vikings trade away Kirk Cousins, whoever's going to be his replacement, we know is not going to be as good as Kirk Cousins, which is why I can see where a lot of people are coming from. However, it is worth it. It is completely worth it because our team is going to be better without Kirk Cousins if we trade him away. Also, Danielle Hunter, another player that we have to do something with that contract. If I pull up the Danielle Hunter contract right now, it's ridiculous. I mean, he's making, I believe he's the second highest paid player on this Vikings team, and he is expected to make in 2022. He's expected to make 12.5% of our salary cap. That's how much money is that? $26 million Danielle Hunter is expected to make this next year. I mean, that's another player we have to do something with because not only is Danielle Hunter going to make $26 million, we don't know if he's going to be healthy, and we don't know if he's going to fit into this Vikings defense next year. The Vikings are expected to run a 3-4 defense. Is Danielle Hunter going to be able to run a 3-4 defense? Is he going to be able to play either outside linebacker, which is what Ed Donatel has said? I mean, he hasn't done that his entire career. He's played hands in the dirt defensive line football. Is he going to be able to be a edge rusher as a outside linebacker? I mean, he's a freak of an athlete. I guess he would be able to, but $26 million for Danielle Hunter, absolutely not worth it. Would we be able to find a trade destination? Yes, because here's the thing. He's $26 million, but if we trade him away, the other team will only have to pay him $14 million of that. So fine, I'm okay with that. Trade away Danielle Hunter. He's a very young, talented player. Yes, you can find trade value in trading him away. 12.5%. This is why I hate restructuring contracts. I absolutely hate it for our team because we restructured Danielle Hunter's contract and it killed us. It absolutely killed us. And now he's being made $26 million. That is absolutely ridiculous. And that's so much money to pay one player that's might get injured and his season's going to be over again. I mean, it might happen with Danielle Hunter. And then you got the same with Kirk Cousins. Like the Vikings, if there's one thing, I wasn't a Rick Spielman hater when it comes to draft day. I was a Rick Spielman hater when it comes to not knowing what to do with money, which is why I'm such a huge fan of this Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi organization, because Kwesi being a Wall Street trader, Kwesi being a financial guy, will understand the value of your money, will understand that giving a quarterback over 20% of your salary cap and a defensive end over 12% of your salary cap kills your team. It might be two of the most important positions, but at the end of the day, you can't leave any holes on your team. Everybody's got to be at least solid starters for you to be a Super Bowl contending team. Let's not forget, our goal is not to keep great players at great positions. Our goal is to build a Super Bowl team, which we haven't had since 2009. And at the end of the day, and we didn't even make a Super Bowl that year. LGK DOC says unless they roll a safety over, no more deep balls. 100%. It's brutal. It's brutal because Justin Jefferson is amazing after the catch. You can give him those short to mid-range passes, but I mean, come on. He's such a beautiful deep threat as well. He can run past guys. I mean, you can throw a 7-yard pass to Justin Jefferson and he can turn it into a 30-yard play because he is that good of a receiver. Top 3 in the NFL, and he's not 3. I mean, just an excellent receiver, and I love to have him on my team. But here's the thing, you guys. If we do get rid of Kirk Cousins, maybe Jefferson doesn't want to play here anymore. I mean, we can't just dismiss the fact that, yes, Jefferson is happy about the Kevin O'Connell hiring. He loves targets. He loves winning. If we're not winning, is he going to even want to play here? I don't think so. And at the end of the day, I mean, if he can't get hit on full stride, if he can't get hit on deep balls, he's not going to want to play here. It's that simple. It's that simple. And that's one of our biggest needs is keeping Justin Jefferson. And with Kirk Cousins, it's another viable solution. So I understand where a lot of people are coming from when they say that they think Kirk Cousins should be under contract with us. I see what they're saying. What I don't see is how anybody can think that you can get offered Sam Darnold and a first-round draft pick, their 6th overall draft pick, and you can possibly turn that down. Now, Darnold realistically will not be a future starter will not be a starter for a long time with this Vikings team. But if he can be a starter for 1 year as a transitional guy, I don't see how people can possibly say that's a bad trade. I think it's crazy, especially with that 6th overall pick, where you can find a player like Malik Willis. Boom, you got 3 quarterbacks right there. Now, I say Malik Willis, but really we don't know right now. I mean, the NFL Combine is this week. I believe quarterbacks are going to be on Wednesday, if I have that right. I think quarterbacks are going to be on Wednesday or Thursday, one of the two. And we can really see what quarterback is going to be most fit for this Vikings team if we can see one coming into this Vikings organization, or really who's going to be the first quarterback taken. Because right now people are saying Malik Willis, but really you have no clue. I mean, there's Malik Willis, Kenny Pickett, Matt Corral. Like, there's multiple names out there that could be the first quarterback taken because we don't know as of right now. LGKDOC says, I think he can. It's of he wants to, though. Yeah, so Kellen Mond, I like him as a future starter for this team. Do I like him as our first choice for starter? Absolutely not. I don't like him as our first choice for starter. I believe our first choice for starter should be whoever we can get in a Kirk Cousins trade. If not, Kirk Cousins. That should be our first choice for starter. If we trade away Kirk Cousins, we got to get a quarterback in the receiving end of it. If we trade away Kirk Cousins, I mean, fine. If you can take someone in free agency, maybe you see a Marcus Mariota coming. I mean, Jameis Winston coming in, Teddy Bridgewater coming back, Ryan Fitzpatrick. Ryan Fitzpatrick coming in. I was about to say Ryan Tannehill. Ryan Fitzpatrick coming in. I mean, he's played with 11 other teams, so might as well just add to his list of teams that he started for. Have him come in on a 1-year deal. These are injury-prone quarterbacks, and then we can see a player like Kellen Mond step in and potentially be a future starter. I don't like him as our first choice for quarterback, but I like him as our future choice for quarterback. I'm a huge Kellen Mond fan. Kellen Mond fan. I like the draft pick a lot, but he's got a lot of red flags. I mean, he's very undersized, and size isn't a huge issue anymore. I mean, back in the 90s and early 2000s it was, but after you see what happens with Russell Wilson, and after you see what happens with Drew Brees, and now it's happening with Kyler Murray, like, size, you can work with undersized quarterbacks. It might be a disadvantage, but you can definitely work with undersized quarterbacks. Accuracy is an issue, and his arm strength is an issue. But at the end of the day, dual threat quarterback would add a lot to our Vikings team, and hopefully we can see him be our future starter. If not, I mean, a trade is possible when it comes to Kellen Mond. Now, what teams are going to want Kellen Mond? I mean, Steelers? Would the Steelers want Kellen Mond? They can have him play for... Would the Steelers want Kellen Mond, though? I don't know, because they would have him play for Mason Rudolph's role. I mean, that could be a possible trade. You trade Kellen Mond to the Steelers. He could definitely work into their system. I can definitely see that happening, especially because they're a defense-heavy team, and you put him in the right situation to succeed. You wouldn't have to pay him a lot. He's still on his rookie contract. What would you get for Kellen Mond? I mean, second-round pick. You wouldn't get much for Kellen Mond. He's a quarterback, so you could get more than what he's actually worth, but at the end of the day, I just don't see Kellen Mond being worth anything close to a first-round draft pick. AJ Green says, man, I wish we never signed Cousins. Absolutely. He's made this team so confusing on what to do. I couldn't imagine being the GM right now. I completely agree. However, I was fully on board with the Vikings signing Cousins. I'm not going to lie. Back in 2017, 2018, I was all on board with the Vikings bringing Cousins. We were a quarterback away from being a Super Bowl team, which is why that 2018 Vikings team and that 2019 Vikings team, we were so good. We should have been Super Bowl teams those 2 years, those back-to-back seasons. And then we just fell apart. Coaching staff completely ruined us. Injuries absolutely killed this team. Not only injuries, but just players playing awful. I mean, look at Xavier Rhodes, who just took a huge decline when we brought in Kirk Cousins. That was a player who was a lockdown corner before Kirk Cousins. And our entire defense, and then on the offensive side of the ball, our offensive line just has never been good. I mean, Pat Elflein fell off after that as well. So 2018 to 2019 Vikings team, that was our time to win a Super Bowl. 2020, they tried to stretch it another year, and then 2021, they tried to stretch it another year, and our defense completely fell apart those 2 years, and we were bottom 5 in the NFL this last 2 years on defense, which is mind-blowing to say, because before Kirk Cousins was our quarterback, we were by far a top 5 defense year after year after year. We were one of the best defenses in football. Then you bring in a quarterback, pay him this much money, and you fall apart. Not only did you pay him this much money and you fall apart, but a lot of players just also fell off. I mean, look at Trey Waynes being a bust. Mackenzie Alexander, also not great. Xavier Rhodes, just about every corner who's played for our team. LGK DOC says, at the time, it was the right move for Kirk. I completely agree. It hasn't worked, so it's time to move on, instead running it back. I agree, and I believe it's almost certain that the Vikings have to at least consider trading away Kirk Cousins. If it doesn't happen, I'm not going to say I'm surprised. I'm not, because of the Vikings team I cheer for. I'm not going to say I'm surprised if Kirk is our quarterback next year, and I'm not going to hate Kirk being our quarterback next year. Because here's the thing, you guys. Kirk is our quarterback next year. We can win our division. Are we going to compete for a Super Bowl? Not with how many holes we have. And if Kirk's our quarterback next year, they'll likely give him a contract extension, have him for another year. Now, I don't completely like the decision, but at the end of the day, it seems like the right move to make because you don't want to play him under a $45 million cap hit, where it'd be like, what, the third highest paid quarterback this next year after Matt Ryan and after Aaron Rodgers, I believe so. I mean, just an absolute, such an overpaid contract. I mean, and then you put him on a 1-year extension, you give him $35 million guaranteed money the next 2 years. I don't like to say this, but at the end of the day, it seems like the second best move is extending Kirk Cousins for 1 more year. After this season, you can look to either trading him away or really whatever you want to do with Kirk Cousins after this next year. But the Vikings can easily win their division with Kirk Cousins under contract, and whoever is going to replace Kirk Cousins is not going to be as good as Kirk Cousins. So you have kind of exactly. I don't want to be the GM right now because Kwesi's in such a tough situation right now where it seems like there's no easy move to be made when it comes to this Kirk situation, when it comes to not only Kirk's, but also Danielle Hunter. We put ourselves in a terrible situation with Hunter. We put ourselves in an awful situation with Adam Thielen's contract, Harrison Smith's contract. I mean, the list goes on of contracts that we just put ourselves in a bad situation for. So it's kind of like Kwesi's scooping up the crap that Rick Spielman put into this organization. I'm not a Spielman hater, though. I love the guy. I thought he was an excellent GM when it comes to draft day. When it comes to understanding value of a dollar, terrible. His contracts seems to all be not worth it when it comes to this team. He cares more on keeping the guy than building the right roster. Look at the Patriots. I keep taking the Patriots for example because the Patriots seem to continuously be an above average team at the very least. Why? Because they don't care about losing players. The Patriots are willing to lose players who aren't willing to take a solid pay cut, take a solid veteran minimum contract. They're willing to lose players. It seems like we're not willing to ever lose talented players. I mean, it's fine. It's fine to move on, you guys, especially when they're older players. It's fine to not bring Harrison Smith back. It's fine to not bring these older players back and let them hit free agency or trade them away or move on. It's completely fine. And you just have to look at these young, undervalued players. And it's why I'm such a huge fan of Harold Landry. And I've talked about him a lot, how he would fit perfectly into this Vikings 3-4 defense. Can we afford him, though, is the question. Harold Landry, just an excellent outside linebacker, and could be one of the best pass rushers in football on our defense. Would be, 100%. You throw Harold Landry on this defense as our 3-4 and play him at outside linebacker, and under a Donatel defense, like, are you kidding me, you guys? There is so much potential here. AJ Green says, how about trade away Cousins for a first-round pick and then grab Tyler Huntley for a bridge quarterback? I don't know if the Ravens would be willing to trade away Tyler Huntley, because the thing with them is, I don't know if Huntley wants to leave as well, because at the end of the day, we know Tyler Huntley is going to look best under the Ravens system. Why? Because if Lamar Jackson gets injured, they don't have to change their playbook at all. They keep the exact same playbook, run the exact same offense, and just throw Tyler Huntley out there, who's basically a younger Lamar Jackson at the end of the day. So you just have two quarterbacks who play the exact same system, and you don't have to don't have to change your playbook. You just throw them out there and nothing changes. It's just Tyler Huntley. But yeah, he's a very talented, very, very athletic quarterback, one of the most in the NFL, and would likely want to be a starter. Is he going to want to be a starter with the Vikings team? I'm not so sure about that, especially because our tight ends are not nearly as good as the Ravens. We might not have Tyler Conklin on our roster next year, and Irv Smith Jr. gets injured every year. So our tight ends are not nearly as good as the Ravens. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know about the Tyler Huntley situation. Would you be able to get Tyler Huntley for a second-round pick, third-round pick? I mean, I'm fine with that. Huntley coming in to our team could be an excellent starter for our team. Are the Ravens willing to give him up, especially with Lamar Jackson, how mobile of a quarterback he is, how much he gets hit, could easily be injured and out for the rest of the season? It'd be nice for them to have a good backup like Tyler Huntley. And then give him a third-round pick. I don't know. So that's tough because, I'd take it. Because, well, see, Tyler Huntley and Kellen Mond, like, who would you even want to start week 1? If you had Tyler Huntley and Kellen Mond as your quarterbacks, I guess you would start Huntley week 1 because he has more experience, but Kellen Mond is pretty similar when it comes to play style. Huntley's definitely more faster and can move around quicker. They're both undersized quarterbacks who don't throw very far. I mean, at the end of the day, it's just, see, there's kind of mixed emotions when it comes to this. There's teams who think you should have two quarterbacks who attributes are different. That way you can switch them out. Look at the we'll take the Saints for example, who have Taysom Hill, who's kind of this mobile quarterback who can do everything, but might not be, his accuracy might not be as great as Drew Brees, who they had. So they kind of interchanged them out and made their system work. Why? Because Sean Payton is just a mastermind. Sean Payton was an excellent offensive mind. Now, I hate the guy. I don't like him at all as a Vikings fan. But at the end of the day, you have to give him credit where credit is due. He was a great offensive mind. And then you have that where you have two quarterbacks play styles who kind of interchange with each other and you can switch them out. And then you have teams like the Ravens who have two quarterbacks, Lamar Jackson and Tyler Huntley, who have the exact same play style. Mobile quarterbacks who love to run with the ball, but can also use their arm, or run first quarterback, but can also use their arm. And then you don't need to change your playbook at all. Your playbook stays the same, whoever is out on the field, and you don't have to, the system stays exactly the same. So it's kind of mixed emotions there where there can be two different situations with the team. I personally, I'm more of a fan of the, I like how the Saints do it, but I'm also a fan of just having the same system, running the exact same offense. But yeah, it's weird. I don't know how Kevin O'Connell's willing to do it. I think either side it works. It works no matter what you do. If you have two quarterbacks, your first and second string quarterbacks play the same, because then they can work better together. And then you also, it's complicated. It's complicated. But the way Sean Payton did it was excellent. Do we have Sean Payton as a head coach? I sure hope so. If we have as great of an offensive mind as Sean Payton was for their team. I mean, just look at that offense. LGK DOCs would rather send a third for Minshew. Hell can probably do it for a fourth and a fifth. Minshew, yeah, I'd take Minshew. I would. But see, I don't want to give up draft picks. It's rough because we have so many needs on this team where I wouldn't give up a draft pick for Minshew. I'd look to free agency, bring in Jameis Winston, or not even Jameis Winston. You know what? Not bring in Jameis Winston. Let's look at bringing in Ryan Fitzpatrick. Let's look at bringing in maybe Teddy Bridgewater. I'm fine with bringing in an injury-prone quarterback who you can pay veteran minimum. That way, when they get injured, you have Kellen Mond who can step out and maybe be a Dak Prescott-like quarterback who steps out and takes the role. A Russell Wilson-like quarterback who steps out and takes a starting role. We could see this happen with the team. Who I don't want is Andy Dalton. That is who I don't want for our team. I will take any other free agent quarterback other than Andy Dalton right now. Heck, I just don't like the guy. Heck, I would take Mitchell Trubisky over Andy Dalton right now. I'm fine with that. Mitchell Trubisky is another free agent quarterback. I would take him on a 1-year deal because you put him on veteran minimum. Or, well, yes, I guess he wouldn't really be technically a veteran. You put him on however least you can pay him. Give him a starting role. Let him play. I just don't want it to be Andy Dalton. If you take a quarterback, AJ Green says, if you take a quarterback in this draft, who would you take and who do you like? I honestly don't think the 2023 class is much better in terms of talent. As of right now, we have no clue. We don't know. Because 1 year ago today, we were talking about this draft class, the first overall pick being Spencer Rattler. Okay, that is a perfect example of not knowing what to expect when it comes to quarterbacks. Or when it comes to the draft at all in 1 year's time, because college football, there's so many D1 teams and so many quarterbacks who can step up in their senior year, in their junior year, and enter the draft. So when you look at this, though, what quarterback am I looking at? So first of all, I want to talk about the Vikings getting the Panthers' 6th overall draft pick. So this is actually possible. I think it's stupid. I think it's so dumb on the Panther side to give up the 6th overall draft pick to the Vikings for Kirk Cousins, giving up their 6th overall draft pick when they are much more than a quarterback away from competing. The reason why I say that it's possible is because Matt Rule is so desperate. He is so desperate for a quarterback right now and could give that up for Kirk Cousins. Now, if we get the 6th overall draft pick, maybe we look at a Malik Willis. Maybe we look at a Kenny Pickett. Now, I've said how the NFL Combine is this week, so the NFL Scouting Combine is this week, so we can really see what these quarterbacks are capable of. Who's going to even be the fastest quarterback? I mean, is it going to be Desmond Riddler? I mean, or we don't know. Matt Corral. I'm a huge fan of Matt Corral as well. So when you look at the first round, I mean, maybe you see a Malik Willis, maybe you see Kenny Pickett. Who I like the most is honestly Matt Corral. Now, see, here's the thing with Matt Corral, and I've said this before. Matt Corral is like putting your money on zeros in Russian roulette. It's like there is such a high upside with Matt Corral. If he plays under the right system, which I believe the Vikings have, our playmakers are great. Our offensive line might not be as good, but he's a mobile quarterback, so we can make him work. You put him under our system where Kevin O'Connell can make him work. You can get Matt Corral in the second round. If I'm going to be honest, you can. He might not be a day one starter for our team, but at the end of the day could be a huge, huge, huge hit of a quarterback. You can find him in the second round. Let's not forget, we don't have to take a quarterback in the first round. As a matter of fact, I don't want the Vikings to take a quarterback in the first round. I really don't. Because I believe if the Vikings take a quarterback in the first round, if we don't get the sixth or at 12th overall is what I'm saying here. If we don't get the sixth overall draft pick, we'll likely do the same thing we did with what's his name? Who is our quarterback? Who's the last quarterback we drafted in the first round? It wasn't Teddy Bridgewater. It was his name's started with a C. I don't know. I'm forgetting his name right now. We'll likely make the same problem, give ourselves the same disadvantage by taking a quarterback, just overdrafting a quarterback, basically panicking drafting a quarterback is what we would likely do to our team if we just sit at 12 and wait for a quarterback. Because how I've said this is you need to fill your needs in free agency. You need to filling your needs in free agency, signing players based off of their position in the draft, taking whoever the best player is available in the draft, going off of value. Christian Ponder, there it is. I don't know how I forgot his name. I barely ever forget Vikings quarterbacks' names, but yeah, Christian Ponder. So we'll likely make the same mistake we did with Ponder by just taking a quarterback based off of their position and overdrafting on them. Just a terrible, terrible draft pick that we had. I just don't want to make the same mistake. And I love Matt Corral. I do. And we're going to see more in this. I'm very, very excited for this NFL Combine this week. And then Carson Strong's another name. Maybe we see Sam Howell. These are names we could find in the second round where the Vikings are sitting at and likely, possibly be our future starter. I mean, it can happen. It can completely happen. We saw, I've compared this draft class with the 2014 draft class, where in the 2014 draft class, I believe, who was drafted in the first round? I think there was 3 quarterbacks drafted in the first round of the 2014 draft class, and Teddy Bridgewater was one of them. And then you look at the second round, and the second round quarterbacks outperformed the first round quarterbacks. The second round quarterbacks being Jimmy Garoppolo and being Derek Carr, who are both starters as of right now, have outperformed the first round draft class, or the first round of quarterbacks. We might see the same situation in this draft where we see Malik Willis fail, where we see Kenny Pickett fail. Who else could be drafted in the first round? Where we see Desmond Ridder fail. And then the quarterbacks drafted in the second round could outperform the quarterbacks drafted in the first round. We could see the same thing happen in this draft class because I believe there is a gem in the mix. I believe one of these quarterbacks, at least one of these quarterbacks, are going to be future starters, are going to be future franchise guys for whatever team takes them. One of these quarterbacks will be. And we'll see the same thing kind of happen with how the 2014 draft class, this is my prediction. And then you take a quarterback in the second round and can be a solid starter. Derek Carr, solid. I mean, Derek Carr is above, I give him top 15 of quarterbacks. He's a very underrated guy. I mean, he throws a beautiful deep ball. Derek Carr is a great arm. Might not be as mobile as some of these quarterbacks I'd like to have, especially for our Vikings team where interior offensive line is god awful. So I'd like to have more of a mobile quarterback than him, but Matt Corral, I love the guy. He's taking shots on zero and Russian roulette. That is what drafting Matt Corral can do for your team. And you can hit on zeros. AJ Green says, I can get a gun shy because of the Ponder pick, but we have to take chances. We do. And the thing about the Vikings is we don't take chances when it comes to quarterbacks. We really don't. We take whatever quarterback. Here's what I've said. We've just slapped Band-Aids at the quarterback positions, and it's worth drafting a quarterback. 12th overall. See, are we going to even get a quarterback at 12th overall who's worth the draft pick? I don't believe we can. I really don't. I think we can in the second round. I just don't think it's going to happen in the first round. And I don't believe we need to. We really don't, because we don't need to draft a quarterback 12th overall and him to be our franchise guy. What we need is defensive players, and really just take whoever the best player is available at 12. I'm fine with that. You don't have to trade down. You don't have to trade up. Just sit at 12 and just take whoever the best player available is. Now, I really would like to see the Vikings, if Malik Willis has a great combine, I would like to see the Vikings get him at 6th. If we do make a trade with the Panthers, at the end of the day, I just don't see it happening. I think it's so dumb for the Panthers to make that trade. I would love for this to happen. But the Panthers wouldn't pick until the 4th round if they make that trade. I mean, the Panthers would be one of the worst teams next year if they made that trade. It's stupid for them. Now, maybe we get the Panthers 6th overall draft pick. Maybe we give them a 3rd round and Kirk Cousins. I think that's fine. I think that's more like it. If we give if we give them our third round draft pick, we give them Kirk Cousins. We take that sixth overall draft pick. We turn that sixth overall draft pick into a quarterback. I mean, this is how you build dynasties. This is how you can be a Super Bowl contending team in the future. This is what I want to see our team do. I do like Malik Willis. I do like Kenny Pickett. We have to see this NFL scouting combine, because the combine might not be the deal breaker. It might not be because look at Joe Burrow, for example. I mean, Joe Burrow didn't have a great combine. He really didn't. I mean, he didn't practice a bunch because he didn't have to. He knew he was going to be the first overall draft pick. He had, what was it, 8-inch hands or something like that, which is just average. That's like my hand size. And there's a lot of things where you might not look as good as the typical create a class quarterback would. But at the end of the day, I mean, look at Joe Burrow. No, they had no doubts drafting him first overall, because they knew that he was arguably the best quarterback I've ever seen in college. Joe Burrow was excellent in college. And yeah, a lot of that had to do with the team that he played for, the fact that he was throwing to Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, the fact that he had Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the backfield, and the fact that he was playing with a top 5 defense. So that 2019 LSU team, absolutely unstoppable. That 2019-2020 LSU team. Love to watch that team play. Speaking of LSU, though, I know a lot of people are looking at the Vikings possibly bringing in Odell. Let's be honest, it's not going to happen. It's not. Like, I would like to see Odell on our team, and I think the Vikings should look to bringing in another quarterback. I mean, another wide receiver. I just don't think it's going to happen. I really don't. Adam Thielen would be so good as a slot receiver. Just throw him inside the slot, run 3 receiver sets, 4 receiver sets. Imagine that. The Vikings running a 3 receiver set. You have Irv Smith Jr. as well. I mean, what quarterback would not want to be a starter on your team? Like, this is where quarterbacks should want to play. This is where quarterbacks should be so desperate to play, is for this Vikings team, where you have elite playmakers, where you are playing for we'll say, we don't really know how good this head coach is going to be, but you're playing for a young offensive-minded head coach. This is where quarterbacks should want to play, which is why I believe a lot of these quarterbacks in the draft will be hoping for the Vikings to call them up, and I don't think it's going to happen. I don't. At least not in the first round. LGK DOC said, would you like to move up for Hamilton? Honestly, I don't think we have to. I don't. Because here's the thing with Hamilton. I've watched so many drafts in my life. If there's one thing I noticed, safeties fall. I mean, I believe the best safety I've ever seen entered the draft class was Derwin James. Derwin James, when was he drafted? And I don't think Hamilton can actually be drafted. Derwin James was drafted 17th overall. I mean, I couldn't even believe how much he fell. I mean, I know Jamal Adams was drafted 7th overall. I might be missing some other names, but Derwin James was outstanding safety. And then you look at what these players have done for their team at the NFL, and they're not as impactful. I mean, safeties are important, but they're not going to impact your team as much as a corner would, as much as a quarterback would, as much as an elite wide receiver was, or a blindside blocker. So no, I don't think the Vikings should trade up for Hamilton, because it's not going to impact your team as much as a corner would, as a quarterback would. These are the positions that you want to trade up for. So first of all, I don't think the Vikings would have to. I think Hamilton can easily fall to the 12th overall pick. He might be, a lot of people are saying he's the second, what would you say? If you're making a list of most talented players, they would put him second. But he can easily fall out of the top 10 because he's a safety. I mean, look at Jamal Adams. He was drafted 7th overall. Jamal Adams might have been a blitzer, might have been a pass rusher, and done everything for the Jets. He goes to Seattle, he hasn't done very much. I mean, you don't see safeties impact a game as much as other positions would. So I don't believe the Vikings should, and I don't believe that they will. But if he falls to 12th, that would be great for us to take him there. And it can happen. It can. I know a lot of people are talking about Hamilton being drafted in the top 5, and I see why, because he's one of the best safeties to ever come into a draft. But at the end of the day, I don't think it's going to happen. You got to see, here's the thing. I say taking players based on, you can't dismiss position. So positional needs is not, you have to look at left tackles, looking at corners. You have to look at quarterbacks. You have to look at players who are going to impact your team the most. That's what typically you see players taken in the top 10. You see that go to them, because look at even Jamal Adams, who was taken 7th overall. The Jets were still not making the playoffs. The Jets were not able to really do much with Jamal Adams. The best thing Jamal Adams did for the Jets was the Jets trading him away to Seattle. That was the best thing Jamal Adams did for them. Don't think it's going to happen. LGK DOC says Sauce Gardner 6'2", Tariq Woolen 6'4", for cornerbacks in the draft. Woolen reportedly ran a 4.2. I would love to see that. Corners are so entertaining. I'm going to be intrigued to watch these corners NFL scouting combine this year, because that is what I'm looking for. Because here's the thing with corners, and this is why I love the Vikings taking a corner. They are, compared to how you talked about Hamilton, corners impact a game tremendously, especially in a pass-heavy league. Having a lockdown corner is so important. And if we can get Sauce Gardner, which don't know if that's going to happen. I mean, people talk about Derek Stingley, Tyreek Woolen. I mean, if we can get one of these corners at 12, which we should be able to, because this is a very deep cornerback class. If we do get one of these cornerbacks at 12, it will impact our team a lot more than Hamilton would. It would impact our team a lot more than taking Linderbaum would. These might be some of the most talented players, some of the best players entering this next draft class. But at the end of the day, they're not going to impact the game as much. They really won't. Centers aren't as impactful. Safeties aren't as impactful, especially when you can get a safety in the 3rd round and still plug him in as a starter. I mean, look at the Vikings who drafted Cam Bynum in the 4th round. Cam Bynum was the best defensive player for the Vikings, defensive rookie for the Vikings this last year. He can be a future starter for our team. I mean, you really don't need to take safeties in the 1st round until about the 20th pick. Still, Hamilton, excellent safety. I would love to see him have a successful career. I think it's going to happen, but we see safeties fall a lot, like Derwin James. I couldn't believe him falling to 17th overall. I believe that was a 2018 draft class, if I can remember right. Still an excellent safety, and he's had a great career in the NFL. Don't get me wrong. Just hasn't been as impactful for the Chargers as another position would have been. Maybe if they took a corner, they'd be in the playoffs this last year. I mean, position is just so important when it comes to players based off of their position, because there's so many great safeties. There are so many great safeties, but there are so few great corners. And having a lockdown corner is crucial in the NFL, especially in 2022, where all teams do is pass. So I would love to see the Vikings bring in a corner who typically year 2, year 3, they start hitting stride. Well, we're not expected to be a Super Bowl contending team until 2 years from now, 3 years from now, where these corners can be our future cornerback 1, our starter, our lockdown guy. Hopefully this can happen. And then maybe Cam Dantzler works out. I don't think it's going to happen. I hate to be realistic and say that Cam Dantzler is not going to look good, but I don't believe it's going to happen. He might have had an excellent rookie season, and this last year was solid when it comes to red zone defense. Yeah, I don't think Cam Dantzler is going to work out. I really don't. I don't think it's going to happen, but he can be a future cornerback too, and will be our starting corner this next year, and we'll have to see. Hopefully it will work out. I really hope it will. I don't think it's going to happen though. But thank you all for tuning into this episode of Morning Kickoff. I hope you all did enjoy. If you did, be sure to rate and subscribe to the podcast for more Minnesota Vikings and football-related content. Thank you all for tuning into this episode of Morning Kickoff. Have a great day.